What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about the paradox of Paradox Pokemon, and basically that is, there is a lot of debate on what these things are. I have done a ton of videos on Paradox Pokemon over the last few weeks, and without fail, all of them, literally all of them, have gotten at least one comment. Most of them have gotten several that state, hey, Paradox Pokemon are actually Pokemon from dreams or imagination. The professors and Heath were imagining them, and the third legendary is bringing them to life. And I just finally want to address this and talk about how I honestly think that this isn't the case. Now, in order to do that, we have to break down where exactly this theory about them being imagined or dreamt of, if you will, and then brought to life. We have to talk about where that came from. So it all comes from the paradox of these paradoxes, and that is that these paradoxes were said to come from a time machine. You know, depending on your version, Professor Sada or Professor Turo has brought Pokemon from the past or the future into Area Zero in the present day, and this time machine was made, very recently. So the question is, how come Heath was able to describe these Pokemon, or at least some of these Pokemon, with him actively describing Great Tusk and Iron Treads many years before that? I believe it was like 87 was the number of years ago Heath's journey was. So that just doesn't make sense. If the time machine brought in Pokemon now, how come they were seen 87 years ago? And Arvin even brings this up as well after you beat the game. You can kind of talk to him and, just find out more about his story. And he'll straight up say, like, hey, isn't it weird that these people saw the things that my mom or dad brought in, and it was, a long time ago. They shouldn't have seen that. And that is a great point. And what people think is that Heath imagined these Pokemon and then wrote about them in the Scarlet book or the Violet book, again, depending on the version. And then years later, Sada or Turo, depending on the version, read this book, loved this book, and we know that they did read and love this book because they even talked to Arvin about it and read this book to Arvin, and Arvin grew up reading the stories from it. And they imagine these Pokemon, and that the third legendary, which is teased and is going to be playing a role in DLC, I'm sure, was taking these imaginations and bringing them to life. So another kind of piece of evidence for this is that Heath imagined a mythical beast that lives down there, not mythical Pokemon, but not that classification, but just a Pokemon that lives in Area Zero, and he drew it. And it is depending on the version that you're playing, a hybrid of Entei, Raikou, and Suicune, or a hybrid of Virizion, Terrakion, and Cobalion. Now, we know that in DLC, because of leaks and data mines and all that fun stuff, that these Pokemon will actually appear. So again, these, along with Great Tusk and Iron Treads, are Pokemon that Heath actually did write about, and with these specifically, he didn't just see, he actually drew, he imagined them. He literally said, I am imagining these Pokemon to exist down there, and the third legendary brought them to life. Now, I'm going to talk about why I don't think this is the case. First off, his drawing of Great Tusk or Iron Treads is a drawing of something he saw. He did not imagine these, draw them up, and then they started popping up. No, he drew what he saw. There's even kind of a photograph of Great Tusk or a photograph of Iron Treads in the Scarlet and Violet book. So that kind of is a small hole in the plan. And also, we have the question of how the heck the time machine happened. Sada and Turo, let's say for a moment that this third legendary was bringing things to life through imagination. Sada and Turo still created a time machine. We watch as they obtain a Master Ball from the time machine and then use it to battle us. They made a time machine. They go into the past or future, depending on the game. The AI does, rather, because Sada and Turo are dead. But it doesn't make sense. They made the time machine. So, like, best case scenario, we are looking at the third legendary is indeed creating these Pokemon from people's imaginations, but they really are from the past and future. So, you know, they still would be ancestors or descendants to our current Pokemon. And I will say the future ones, you know, there is no one set future, even though there is one set past. So it could be from an alternate future, and we don't necessarily have to go the mechanical Ultron route. But the past ones, at least, you know, they're solid, they're concrete. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So I am going to propose my kind of take on all of this. I think that the third legendary could indeed be reality warping. I think that there is a chance that the Raikou, Suicune, Entei mix and the Virizion, Cobalion, and Terrakion mix will be seen in DLC and will even be Pokemon that were imagined. I do think that they will be Pokemon straight from Heath's imagination that we will see. But I also think that because he's warping reality, you know, reality is so much more grand than what's real and what isn't. It's what was and what will be and all that. So I think that this third legendary, it encompasses all of that, right? Like, I think kind of about the Infinity Gauntlet. I already mentioned Ultron, so I may as well just go full in with the Marvel references here. But the Infinity Gauntlet is something that Thanos uses, and it has different Infinity Stones on it, and each Infinity Stone does something different. And so, when Thanos has them all, he is able to control, like, anything. I mean, he's able to snap his fingers and erase half of the life in the universe. And some of these things we see him do is we see him reverse time. We see him change reality, like make people cubes and make them like ribbons and turn laser gun into a bubble gun, you know. So it encompasses all that, and I think that's kind of what this third legendary is sure, it's able to bring these things up from imagination, but it's also able to warp time too, because time is a crucial part of reality. Again, it's what was and what will be. And so he's making these wormholes that perhaps allowed Heath to see something from another time, a Great Tusk or an Iron Treads, depending on the version you're playing. Then the professors were able to harness this energy, because of course this Pokemon, for it to be radiating it so much that he's just kind of accidentally shooting things out of time, then it makes sense that this energy would just exist all in Area Zero, and the professors found a way to harness it and warp reality to bring in Pokemon from the past and from the future, which would also be a great explainer for how they're able to bring things in from the future, because again, the thing about the future is that there is no set future, you know, like there is, if I wake up tomorrow, there is a future where I go outside and I get in my car and I drive to the beach. But there's also a future where I stay inside because it's December and I don't want to go to the beach because it's December. What am I going to do at the beach in December? So there's alternate futures, and of course there's much bigger versions of that, you know, things like, what if we go to World War III tomorrow? What if we don't? What if a nuke is dropped? You know, bigger things that would have much more dire consequences. And that makes sense because the professors are not accessing time power, they are accessing reality power. He's able to bring things in from a specific future where everything seems to be made of metal. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of absurd, right? I mean, it's such a crazy thing to wrap your head around, but I do think that's the case here. I also think that there is another possible explanation, and that is that maybe it's just infinite energy down there. My good friend Kayla's Capsule did like this whole thing breaking down the multiverse and stuff. It's a great series. One thing that she talks about in it is how exposure to infinite energy basically leads to immortality. We know this to be true. AZ revived his Floette with infinite energy. This allowed Floette to not only come back to life, but also to be alive 3,000 years later. And it's even called the Eternal Flower Floette, implying that Floette would be, immortal. AZ himself, he's a human, yet he is immortal. He has been around for over 3,000 years. So his exposure to the ultimate weapon that he created kind of gave him immortality. And what I would propose is that there's a similar thing going on in Area Zero, and I even did a video on why I think that Area Zero was caused by AZ's ultimate weapon, which would explain why there's infinite energy there. And I know you'll say, hey, the Great Crater of Paldea actually predates the firing of the ultimate weapon. And I know that, and there's an explainer for that in that video, so check that out if you do want to hear all about that. But the point is, I do think that there is infinite energy down there, and I do personally think that it's from the ultimate weapon. And this would explain why we are able to see time travel accessed. We're able to see them find Pokemon and bring them to the past, because that's all infinite energy is. It's like the energy of life. It is like the Pokemon equivalent of the Force. There's even a chance that the reason that Heath was able to see a Great Tusk or an Iron Treads is because infinite energy down there. And just in the Scarlet version, it allowed a Great Tusk that was still living down there, because you figure it is a crater, so it's kind of hidden away from the rest of the world. So perhaps Great Tusk's evolution to Donphan actually have been preserved there, similar to how we see in the anime with places like the Tree of Beginning having fossil Pokemon still living in it. It could be a similar thing here. It was so untouched, a Great Tusk was living there, and infinite energy let it continue to live. That's a Great Tusk that's been alive for 3,000 plus years. This could even potentially speed up the evolutionary process in Pokemon, allowing them to kind of go ahead and become Iron Treads or Iron Thorns, depending on the version you play. Again, that one's a little more rocky. I don't like that one as much, but I hope the point that I can get across here is that I do think that the third legendary is a lot more than it can make your dreams come true. No, I think that it is doing something with time. And further evidence of this would be that if you look into the data of these games, you actually can see some NPCs that are going to pop up in DLC. One guy's named Billy, another person's named Onair. They don't matter here, but interestingly enough, with them is Heath, implying that Heath will be a character you will meet in DLC. How is that possible? Heath was 87 years ago, and in his book you can tell he's an older man, so he really shouldn't be alive now, because his journey into Area Zero exposed him to infinite energy, thus making him immortal. Or because time warping shenanigans, and perhaps the third legendary warped him into the future. Maybe he came back to Area Zero. I mean, he was fascinated with this place. So he goes there, he writes the Scarlet or Violet book, comes back, but he wants to go back personally. He wants to find out what was there. He had surreal, supernatural experiences there, so his obsession with it makes him go back, and he ends up getting warped to the present day. His future, our present day. But yeah, I know, like I said, that this is absolutely absurd, but I just hope I can illustrate that I do think that the third legendary is associated with time and not just imagination becoming real. It seems like a lot more is at play here, and I don't think it's just as simple as, these things were imagined and came to life. There's a time machine that was clearly created and is clearly functioning, which would imply that these are indeed ancestors and descendants of Pokemon that we have today. And there's Heath popping up in DLC when he should long be dead, plus the fact that we have something in Pokemon Infinite Energy that frankly looks very connected to Area Zero, that we know can do shenanigans with life and DNA. We know that it is used to Mega Evolve Pokemon, which is literally a DNA change. So all of this kind of just ties itself in a bow really nicely to say It's time shenanigans, not just simple dreams come true. This isn't Disneyland, right? Alright, so be sure to let me know what you think on this in the comments below. Be sure to also like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all of our future Pokemon videos. And be sure to check out the other Paradox videos we've done. It's been a lot of fun. This is just such an absurd concept. This is like on the level of Infinite Energy and Mega Evolution in terms of how much it has shaped the world of Pokemon, how much it has given us to talk about with the world of Pokemon. And until next time, I will see all of you later.